One of the things that I think we fail to realize is just how tippy sort of major events that happen in your life actually are. And the reason why I am suggesting this is reflecting on, different paper publications that I've had, and looking at the sort of dynamics within academia. And it's very reflective of the real world in general. What we really fail to realize, we have this sort of presumption that the world is random, and yet it is incredibly not random in a lot of ways. And I think it's sort of a poor way of teaching that the world is random. It's good to teach that the world is probabilistic in a lot of different ways, which is what we get. That more ideas are moving that way. We still get very, very much taught a deterministic world, but the thing to remember. And so, what do I mean by these topics? So, probabilistic world is one that has chance and randomness that is built into it. A deterministic world is one that sort of is laid out before you, and it's a step-by-step nature. But it's actually a blend of the two, in that there is a lot of autocorrelation that happens in our life, right? One thing leads to the next thing, leads to the next thing, which is called path dependency sometimes. And it's deeply built into it. But not only that, the decisions that we make and the things that happen to us, whether we, I'm thinking in terms of paper publications, for example, which is the key sort of output that I would look at. But for you, it might be getting a sale, a major sale of, say it's, $10 million. You're a small startup, and you've worked really hard for 5 years, and then you get a $10 million sale. What you don't realize is that it's incredibly tippy in terms of how people decide one way or the other of whether something is good or not. Because by the time somebody has worked on something for 5 years, which is like a paper publication, it's pretty good. Even if you're at a low-tiered school, and you don't have access to various different research and, tools and resources and all this kind of stuff. Just like if you're at a sort of a low tier startup, whatever that looks like, if you work on something for 5 years, it's okay. It's not that it's a complete disaster at that moment. At least one would expect that if you worked on something for a substantial amount of time. And then after you do that, what you realize is that there is a lot of tippiness that happens in terms of how people choose one way or the other. It depends on so many different factors. With a paper, for example, of getting it accepted, it depends on what papers were accepted within, or what other papers were accepted in the near past. What are on the sort of portfolio for the journal? What are the ones that are in the pipeline? Various different sort of propensities of the individual that's involved, the sort of review process, if they're friendly, there's just so much randomness that's involved within the process. Just like, getting a major grant or winning, a sale of millions of dollars, there's a lot in terms of where there's just a lot of tippiness. So even though you get to the point that you have something that is viable and it could work and it could be good, but it's just that it's tippy and it goes one way or the other. And you have to look back and appreciate just, one way to think about this is, yes, every time you come up for a decision or some sort of major event in your life, you're probably going to be rejected. Because of this tippiness, unless fortune favors you for whatever reason. But on the other side is to look back and just think about how appreciative you could be and sort of thankful winning the little breaks that you did and all the various steps along the way of how you actually got there, where it could have went one way or the other. Perfect example of this. And I think back of when I was, when I was a kid, I used to bike to school. It was about a kilometer away. I was in Canada, so we did kilometers. So I was a kilometer away, and I used to ride my bike on the main road, and there was these dump trucks that would pass you full of gravel. And I do remember many incidences where they didn't pull over enough. And what it took me, because I was probably 10 years old, 10, 11, 12 years old, where I'd be riding to school on the road, and these dump trucks would pass you, and it would just require them not moving over just enough, and you sort of making that happenstance, or me making that sort of happenstance movement where I would twitch, which is what, like, a 12-year-old does, right? You're kind of unstable, or a 10-year-old does. And all of these things are just, the luck of getting through and sort of being fortunate enough to get through and to do sort of have positive outcomes. It is pretty miraculous. And we have to look back and be very, very, very appreciative of the fact that we do get to where we are. And all of the little moments, we might think of it as like, it's all these things are holding us back, and it's problematic. And I can sort of dwell on the nature of the structure of things, which is what's causing some of this stuff. But at the same time, we can think about how appreciative I am to get the opportunities that I've gotten so far. And I think that is a nice way to view some of this stuff, is that even though we have these sort of limitations and constraints, there is also a lot of beauty and fortune that happens, and we should be thankful for getting the opportunities that we have. And I think that's an important message to take home. So with that, give me give me some comments. And I didn't know what to say there. Give me some comments. Let me know what you think of the podcast. But thank you so much. Take care and have a wonderful day.